what would actually happen if a direct, full-scale military conflict erupted between Russia and the NATO alliance? To understand this dangerous scenario, we must analyze the most sensitive geopolitical flashpoint in Eastern Europe: the Suwalki Gap, a narrow 60-mile land corridor connecting Poland directly to the Baltic states. In real-world military doctrine, this vulnerable strip of territory represents NATO's primary strategic choke point. A sudden hypothetical offensive would attempt to sever this corridor, isolating Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia from mainland Europe. Within minutes of the first kinetic strike against Allied forces, NATO's North Atlantic Council would formally trigger Article 5. Article 5 explicitly dictates that an armed attack against any single member state is legally considered an attack against all allies. However, deploying massive continental forces does not happen instantly. It relies heavily on complex rapid response logistics. The initial hours would be characterized by fierce localized border clashes while main Allied heavy divisions begin emergency mobilization. Russian military commanders would heavily leverage Kaliningrad, a densely fortified coastal enclave equipped with long-range strike systems. Kaliningrad functions as an anti-access area denial hub, designed to prevent Allied naval and air reinforcements from entering the Baltic. Simultaneously, Belarusian territory would be utilized as a massive staging area to support the northern offensive thrust. The primary operational goal of such an assault would be isolating the Baltic capitals before NATO's air power can fully deploy. However, NATO's enhanced forward presence multinational battle groups already stationed in the Baltics would instantly join the fight. This creates an immediate, catastrophic military confrontation between major European armed forces and frontline units. In Washington, Brussels, and European capitals, emergency war cabinets would convene to coordinate maximum military response. Long-range precision strikes would immediately target border airfields, military radar stations, and critical supply hubs. The Baltic Sea would transform overnight into a heavily contested, dangerous naval and aerial theater of operations. Unlike historic European conflicts, modern high-intensity warfare begins with an all-out electronic warfare offensive. GPS signals, military communications, and radar grids across Central and Northern Europe would face unprecedented jamming operations. NATO's immediate strategic focus would not be a rushed land counter-offensive, but establishing total regional air superiority. Advanced fifth-generation stealth fighters like the F-35 would deploy from forward bases in Germany, Poland, and the Netherlands. Their primary tactical mission would be neutralizing enemy air defense batteries embedded in Kaliningrad and border territories. The fierce battle for control of the European skies would define the strategic outcome of the opening 48 hours. This critical opening phase sets the foundation for what would become a massive continental war of attrition. As the conflict enters its first full week, the air campaign reaches an unprecedented level of intensity and attrition. Russia's integrated air defense network, built around long-range systems like the S-400, forms a dense protective barrier. NATO air forces would launch massive, multi-layered saturation strikes utilizing stealth cruise missiles and advanced electronic warfare. The main objective is punching clear operational corridors through air defense bubbles, enabling heavy bombers to strike supply lines. At the same time, newly integrated NATO members Finland and Sweden fundamentally alter the strategic geography of the region. With Finland sharing a 1,300-kilometer direct border, Russian northern military bases face immediate tactical pressure. Sweden's island of Gotland becomes an unsinkable operational stronghold, effectively dominating central Baltic maritime routes. The Russian Baltic Fleet based in Baltijsk finds itself strictly confined within range of Scandinavian precision artillery. Meanwhile, across eastern Poland, massive NATO military convoys stream eastward along primary highway networks day and night. Logistical bottlenecks rapidly emerge as key bridges, railway hubs, and fuel storage reserves become high-priority missile targets. Long-range hypersonic and ballistic strikes would hit rear staging bases, maintenance centers, and transport nodes inside Poland. In response, NATO's integrated air defenses, including Patriot and SAMP-T systems, work overtime to protect critical corridors. The financial and industrial strain of firing multi-million-dollar interceptor missiles every hour begins to compound rapidly. On the ground, heavy armored divisions attempting to advance encounter deeply fortified positions and dense minefields. Modern military operations prove that massive armored charges are extremely vulnerable without complete air dominance and drone control. Both sides deploy tens of thousands of first-person view attack drones, turning the front line into a lethal zone for heavy armor. Frontline command posts are forced to operate deep underground or maintain constant mobility to survive high-precision strikes. The northern sector in the Baltic states becomes a grueling tactical battle of attrition, holding the line for main forces. At sea, nuclear and diesel attack submarines conduct silent operations, hunting surface warships and strategic supply vessels. Commercial maritime traffic across the North and Baltic seas halts completely, crippling regional industrial economies. European power grids and municipal networks face aggressive cyber strikes, causing rolling blackouts across key industrial regions. Allied cyber defense commands initiate powerful counter-offensives against military communications and critical state infrastructure. The conflict expands far beyond traditional military lines into a total, multi-domain digital and economic war. By the second week of high-intensity combat, both military commands face an immense operational dilemma. The staggering rate of daily ammunition consumption forces a major shift from initial blitz maneuvers to sustainable resource management. Opening a secondary theater of operations, strategic focus shifts south toward the Black Sea and the Danube Delta. Romania and Bulgaria transform into critical staging areas and logistics arteries for NATO forces reinforcing southern Europe. The Black Sea Fleet operates under constant threat from autonomous naval surface drones, submarine patrols, and airstrikes. Strategic maritime access through the Turkish Straits remains legally restricted to foreign warships under the Montreux Convention. This diplomatic reality prevents NATO from deploying external heavy aircraft carriers directly into the Black Sea theater. Instead, Allied forces rely heavily on major air bases in Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece to project long-range air power. In the Suwalki sector, intense combat continues as Allied land forces attempt to break the land blockade of the Baltic region. Heavy artillery duels consume tens of thousands of specialized high-explosive and GPS-guided artillery shells every single day. Industrial manufacturing capacities on both sides are pushed far beyond their design limits to replace rapid combat losses. European defense manufacturing facilities transition into round-the-clock emergency operating schedules to produce basic munitions. However, complex supply chain bottlenecks for raw materials and microelectronics create severe production delays for advanced systems. Russian defense enterprises similarly operate on three-shift war schedules, pulling thousands of armored vehicles from deep storage bases. Yet, frontline reports showing older legacy tank models confirm the extreme strain on modern manufacturing facilities. Precision-guided missile stockpiles on both sides show heavy depletion after consecutive weeks of massive air campaigns. Military planners are forced to strictly prioritize precision weapons for high-value operational and strategic targets only. This shift transforms the ground war into an increasingly grueling, infantry-heavy combat environment along fortified lines. Dense networks of reconnaissance and strike drones operating along the front lines make large-scale troop concentrations nearly impossible. Attempting an armored breakthrough without complete air supremacy results in immediate and severe equipment casualties. Meanwhile, space-based early warning satellites continuously monitor strategic nuclear missile silos and mobile launch pads. Strict operational boundaries are observed by both sides to prevent accidental triggers for a catastrophic strategic nuclear exchange. Both command structures recognize that initiating nuclear strikes guarantees absolute mutual destruction and global collapse. Consequently, the war remains strictly conventional, fought through industrial output, manpower endurance, and technological adaptation. Diplomatic hotlines between major capitals remain open to manage crisis communication and avoid lethal miscalculations. Yet, active fighting continues along a 1,000-kilometer front line stretching from the high north to the Black Sea coast. The conflict enters a decisive phase where national economic stamina becomes far more important than initial tactical gains. Entering the second month of global conflict, global economic networks suffer unprecedented structural disruptions and chaos. International energy markets experience extreme volatility, with crude oil and natural gas prices reaching historic peak levels. European economies face emergency fuel rationing and severe manufacturing slowdowns due to severed trade routes and energy cuts. Inside Russia, strict financial controls and national mobilization align the domestic market entirely behind the war effort. However, acute labor shortages across civilian industries begin to create deep, long-term economic friction and inflation. Skyrocketing interest rates and inflation impose severe financial burdens across Eastern European nations hosting millions of refugees. The United States Congress passes sweeping Lend-Lease legislation to fund and supply Allied military operations in Europe. American industrial power ramps up production lines for heavy munitions, advanced air defense missiles, and replacement aircraft. Atlantic maritime routes feature protected supply convoys guarded by Allied destroyers and naval aircraft against submarine threats. China maintains a careful diplomatic posture, expanding commercial trade with non-Western nations while avoiding military involvement. Global commercial shipping entirely bypasses Northern Europe, redirecting freight through alternative Mediterranean and Atlantic ports. International banking networks freeze state-owned financial assets, locking targeted funds out of global trade systems. In the Arctic theater, northern Scandinavia becomes a region of heavy naval surveillance and strategic deterrence maneuvers. The Russian Northern Fleet guards its naval bastions near Murmansk to protect its strategic submarine fleet and northern approaches. NATO forces execute cold-weather operations in northern Norway to protect transatlantic maritime communication corridors. On the main European theater, fortified defense lines become nearly impregnable due to automated turrets and dense minefields. Engineers attempting mine-clearing operations under constant drone surveillance suffer extreme difficulty and high casualty rates. Neither offensive force can execute a decisive, war-winning breakthrough along the primary line of contact in Eastern Europe. The Battle of Attrition mirrors historic European conflicts where industrial manufacturing capacity ultimately dictates survival. Public opinion in Western capitals faces a test of societal endurance as war expenditures and casualty figures continue to rise. Strategic strikes on power generation hubs test civil resilience and municipal infrastructure across major European metropolitan areas. In response, long-range Allied strike drones target industrial plants and energy refineries deep behind enemy lines. The mutual destruction of critical economic infrastructure forces both leaderships to evaluate the true cost of continued warfare. Military planners come to a sobering conclusion. Achieving absolute victory over a peer adversary is mathematically improbable. The war approaches a state of complete material culmination, where additional offensive operations yield negligible strategic gains. Analyzing the military and industrial balance after 2 months reveals the hard mathematical reality of modern peer conflict. The NATO alliance holds an overwhelming long-term advantage in total GDP, manufacturing scale, and technological reserves. However, Russia's ability to sustain high-intensity conventional warfare using vast pre-war stockpiles initially offset that gap. As those pre-war stockpiles face near-total depletion, the industrial weight of 32 Allied economies begins to dominate. European defense output reaches true mass production levels, steadily reducing the critical ammunition deficit on the front lines. Fresh replacement hardware, including advanced tactical aircraft and armored platforms, arrives continuously at Allied staging bases. Conversely, mounting material losses force opposing forces to deploy increasingly outdated legacy armor from remote storage yards. Artillery barrel wear reaches critical failure thresholds, severely reducing firing range, accuracy, and overall support capability. The Suwalki Gap salient becomes an unsustainable operational position for offensive troops under continuous precision bombardment. Allied counteroffensives, supported by fresh armored brigades, slowly push back overextended frontline salients in the north. The Baltic states are permanently reconnected via secure land corridors to mainland Europe, breaking their initial isolation. In Kaliningrad, military infrastructure and air defense assets suffer catastrophic degradation after weeks of concentrated strikes. The enclave permanently loses its capability to project an effective air defense umbrella over the central Baltic region. Similarly, major naval bases in the Black Sea are rendered operationally unusable for major fleet deployments and maneuvers. Yet, despite tactical retreats, deeply prepared defensive positions along main borders remain exceptionally difficult to break. Casualty totals on both sides reach levels unseen on the European continent since the middle of the 20th century. The immense human and financial toll generates heavy domestic political pressure across every participating government. In Western democracies, public debates intensify regarding the long-term economic sustainability of a prolonged European war. In Russia, mounting budget deficits and economic reallocation spark growing administrative and social strain across provinces. Both command structures realize that continuing a war of conventional attrition will only result in total economic collapse. The strategic objective of both military blocs shifts from pursuing total military victory to securing favorable ceasefire terms. Neutral diplomatic envoys initiate formal ceasefire negotiations in Geneva, establishing emergency communication frameworks. Military commanders order a temporary operational pause along the main lines of contact while diplomatic delegations meet. The active front line freezes along a heavily militarized, densely mined line of contact extending across Eastern Europe. The international community watches closely as negotiators attempt to construct a stable peace framework from the ruins of war. The diplomatic negotiations in Geneva highlight the immense difficulty of concluding a full-scale war between peer powers. A formal, legally binding ceasefire is signed, halting all aerial strikes, naval engagements, and ground offensive actions. Demilitarized buffer zones are established along the entire line of contact, monitored by international peacekeeping forces. Heavy artillery, rocket systems, and armor are mandated to withdraw 50 kilometers back from designated border lines. The strategic security of the Baltic states is permanently secured through reinforced land transit corridors and heavy Allied garrisons. Kaliningrad undergoes strict demilitarization protocols under the supervision of international diplomatic observation teams. In exchange, global economic sanctions are restructured into a phased framework tied strictly to long-term border compliance. Frontline allied nations in Eastern Europe receive permanent, binding multinational defense commitments and expanded troop bases. The European continent emerges structurally transformed, anchored by a heavily fortified, highly militarized eastern frontier. National defense expenditures across NATO member states permanently shift above 3% of annual gross domestic product. The United States maintains a permanent, large-scale military deployment across Central and Eastern Europe to preserve deterrence. Russia redirects its remaining national resources toward internal economic reconstruction, industrial repair, and stabilization. The global economy slowly recovers from energy shocks, constructing new trade and supply corridors that bypass high-risk zones. Global military analysts study the conflict as definitive historic proof of how autonomous technology permanently altered warfare. The era of mass-armored thunder runs is officially replaced by distributed autonomous drone grids and electronic warfare systems. The conflict conclusively proved that conventional military deterrence remains the ultimate guarantor of continental peace. Neither side achieved its original maximalist political objectives, demonstrating the catastrophic cost of modern peer warfare. Historical data and military science confirm that a full-scale conflict between nuclear-armed blocs results in mutual exhaustion. The new European map features a heavily fortified security line stretching continuously from the high Arctic down to the Black Sea. War-torn regions begin the long, multi-year process of rebuilding damaged infrastructure and restoring civilian energy grids. Global security architecture is completely redesigned with new treaty mechanisms to prevent future catastrophic escalation. Geography, technological innovation, and industrial stamina remain the three immutable pillars of modern geopolitical power. The war demonstrated beyond doubt that in a conflict between modern peer powers, there are no true victors, only survivors. Data, maps, and military analysis prove that maintaining strength and preventing such a war is the only rational choice. What if Russia attacked NATO? The data proves the cost.